were the northern tribes, the 10 lost tribes of Israel, as they're called, the state of Israel. But when the break came in the 900 period, the northern area was more flourished more than the southern area. It was more economically prosperous than the southern area. And things were looking very good for them for the next couple of hundred years. It was the south that sort of fell back into backwardness more or less. Although most of the prophets that you know in the front, if you're a Christian reader of the Bible, most of the prophets are southern prophets. Amos, Isaiah, Jeremiah, all those people are southern prophets. Don't forget the southerners ultimately collected the Bible as we know it. They didn't collect the northern texts so much. So we don't know a lot, and we don't know. Well, what happened was the Assyrian conquest came along. The Assyrians were a very powerful northern Syrian group, had a very flourishing empire around where, up in the northern part of Iraq and northern part of Syria today. And if you go to the British Museum, you'll see all their sculptures there. They're absolutely huge collection of Assyrian sculptures in the British Museum that they brought from places like Nineveh and places like that. You can see the pictures. Anyway, they came in and they were successful in the north and wiped the north out and basically exiled the north. Their way of treating conquered peoples was to basically cut off the head. I don't think you see these pictures of them going into captivity. That's not how it works. The notables, the influential people, the people worth something were sent to captivity in some areas. But the peasants, the sort of, salt of the earth, they didn't march all those people off. They just kind of stayed there. But since there was no really functioning government to protect them or things like that, they would have been subject to marauders and different other incursions. Things wouldn't have been very well organized or together, and things would have been falling apart after you cut the top slice off. Now, the Assyrians may have gone further. They may have taken more people away. But they resettled people somewhere in Iran or further around out that way. And in fact, if you go to Afghanistan today, and I've been to Afghanistan back in those days, on the trains, people would come up to me and say, "Oh, you came from Israel? I'm an Israelite." People in Afghanistan would say this because they have all a lot of the names, the tribal names in Afghanistan are Israelite-type tribal names. And people say, the 10 lost tribes, where did they go? Well, they probably melted away in places like Afghanistan, which were part of the eastern part of the Persian Assyrian Empire at that time. So there are groups in Afghanistan still make those claims, whether real or imagined. Again, DNA would probably be of some interest in that regard. I'm sure DNA is going to be very helpful in the future in historical studies of those kinds of things. So whatever happened, the conquest of the Assyrians didn't get down to the south. The south was miraculously saved because there was trouble back home, and they left off the campaign and they went back. They besieged Jerusalem for a while, but the king of Jerusalem, a fellow called Hezekiah, had built a water tunnel, and you could go down underground and get to the water channels without having the conquerors know where they were or impede you. So Jerusalem was miraculously saved, though a lot of the other parts of the country were decimated. But the Judeans in the south then took this as something miraculous, and the prophets particularly sprung up at that time. We have a lot of prophets coming at that time, saying the north fell because of its sins and so on and so forth, and the south survived even though it's got a lot of sins, but it survived, and then how many have read Amos? He's a prophet operating at that time. He said, Yahweh or the Lord or Jehovah roars from Zion. Zion was the seat of the Davidic family in Jerusalem. It was a small hill area in Jerusalem called Mount Zion. So when the prophets speak about Jerusalem, David, things like that, they speak about Zion. Of course, the Mormons now speak about Zion being out in Utah, which is fine, and we have Zion National Park and different things like that. And there's the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, so there's a huge Jewish plot somewhere to take over the world, supposedly. That's been proven to be a czarist forgery that they circulated and undermined socialism, which they thought had been created by Jews and was basically run by Jews, they thought, so they could then blame the Jews for their attack on socialism and things of that kind, and make it look as if there was a little, a little constituency of Jews. If you know Jews, you know they don't sit and plot very much because they never agree with each other. And as everyone said, well, you have a room of 10 Jews, you probably have 11 opinions or something. That's maybe too complimentary to the Jewish people, but in fact, that's what people say. And, I don't think that, I've never met any of them capable of plotting anything, frankly. If they were so capable of plotting everything, they wouldn't be in the terrible situation they're in today. So I don't really see this plot thing as even semi-serious or even minusculely serious. But a lot of people who have access to grind and inferiority complexes themselves, or are worked up about something, or have a problem, love to focus in on that particular thing. It kind of makes them feel better for some reason. If someone lower than themselves to kick, that's great for them. So it's always the refuge of, I think, a lot of losers. Unfortunately, after World War I, all the losers got control of a country through democracy. Democracy doesn't always bring about what Bush is trying to bring about. It can bring about insane people taking over when the situation is desperate, which is often what happens. You have to have institutions to make democracy run. You have to have institutions that people recognize, care about, honor, and so on, sort of like the American Constitution brought into being. You just can't throw democracy into a country like Iraq. You see what the chaos is now. And you know who's going to come out in control. All the bully boys are going to come out in control. The people who can cut more throats, kill more people, behead more people, and when you intimidate more people. That's what happened in Germany after World War I. So what I'm trying to say, all the losers, lost souls, bullies, and others came out of the woodwork, took over. You got the Holocaust. Because all those societies collapsed, and so all their maniacal predispositions came